Hi, Titans, and welcome to our first virtual panel focusing on girls and women in sports. My name is Jackie Lombardi. I am the Director of Admissions and the head varsity softball coach here at Holy Trinity. Tonight's panel is going to be focusing on female athletics and the benefits of being a female athlete, both as a child, through college, and into your professional career. And we are very lucky to have 4 members of our Titan family here with us tonight who are going to discuss both their very impressive athletic and professional careers, as well as how playing sports has benefited them throughout their life. So without further ado, first up, we have Ann O'Connell. Ann is one of our school counselors at Holy Trinity. She's also a Titan parent of 2 graduated Titans, class of 2004 and 2008. She graduated from Fordham University, earned her master's from St. John's University. And while at Fordham, she played for the Fordham women's basketball team from 1976 to 1980. She was the NCAA record holder for most career rebounds, just one shy actually of 2,000 rebounds over her career from 1980 to 2008. She played professionally for 2 years and then was inducted into the Fordham Hall of Fame in 1986, the Monsignor Scanlon High School Hall of Fame 1994, which was her alma mater. And she actually had her number retired at Fordham University in 2009. She is only one of 2 people in the history of the Fordham basketball program, both male or female, to earn that honor. And finally, she was inducted into the New York City Basketball Hall of Fame in 2017. So welcome, Ann.
Thank you.
Cute, Ann. That was awesome.
Next up, we have Coach Susan Cassidy-Lyke, Holy Titan class of 1983. She is a retired NYPD captain and is currently the director of athletics and head softball coach at Molloy College, where she has earned many accolades over the years, some of which are the ECC Coach of the Year. She earned that honor 4 times over her career, and the ECC Championship 3 times. She was also the head varsity softball coach at Holy Trinity from 1991 to 2005, where she earned 9 CHSAA titles, 4 state championships. She was named the Nassau-Suffolk CHSAA Coach of the Year 4 times, Nassau County Female Coach of the Year in 1995, Newsday Nassau County Coach of the Year 2003. She was inducted into the Molloy Lions Athletics Hall of Fame in 1997, where she played basketball and softball. So not only does she work at Molloy, but she also graduated from Molloy as well. And finally, she was inducted into the New York State High School Softball Hall of Fame in 2017. So welcome, Sue. Next up, we have Tia Grant, Holy Trinity class of 2005. She earned her bachelor's degree and triple majored in human services, psychology, and sociology at Villanova University, and earned her master's in elementary inclusive education from the Teachers College of Columbia University. She is an elementary school teacher and a middle school girls basketball coach. While at Villanova, she was a member of the women's basketball program, where she was a 4-year starter as well as team captain. She was fortunate enough to make several NCAA tournament appearances and participated in the Women's National Invitation Tournament Elite 8. She was a leader in the Big East Conference 3-point percentage and a Big East all-academic team. While she was at Holy Trinity, she was a member of the basketball program, where she earned 2 state federation championships. She was named the Catholic High School Athletic Association Player of the Year. She was a New York State First Team member. She was the Street and Smiths High School All-American, a member of the USA Basketball East team. She was also state championship all-tournament team 2 times in her career, Adidas All-American team, Nike USA Select team, and is a member of the 1,000-point career club. So welcome, Tia. And last but not least, we have Coach Carla Campagna, Holy Trinity class of 2008. She is currently the head softball coach and assistant athletic director at Adelphi University. She's also the liaison for academics for the athletic department at Adelphi. She is president and owner of First Pitch Softball Training. And previous to her roles at Adelphi, she served as an academic advisor and assistant softball coach at LIU Post. She was a member of the Molloy College softball team from 2009 to 2012. She was inducted into the Molloy College Hall of Fame in 2019 and racked up several accolades along the way. She made NCAA appearances in 2010, 11, and 12, including their participation in the Division II College World Series in 2010. Cool. She was an East Coast Conference champion 2 times, East Regional champion in 2010, ranked 4th in the nation in toughest to strike out in 2010. The ECC first team selections, she was East Coast Conference Player of the Year in 2011, NFCA All Regional Selection first team 2011 to 2012, East Region Player of the Year in 2011, and All-American third team in 2012. Prior to Molloy, she was a member of the Holy Trinity Varsity softball program, where she earned 2 state championships, 3 league championships, was named to the all-league team 3 times, was Player of the Year in 2008, and a New York State first team selection in 2008 as well. So welcome, Carla. Wow. Okay, so all of us on the panel have obviously played sports growing up, so it seems like a natural place to start our discussion tonight. So Tia, I'm going to start with you. If you just want to tell us a little bit about growing up playing sports, sort of how you figured out what sports you were passionate about, if you ever tried a sport that maybe you didn't like as much. So just your overall development as a young athlete.
Sure. So I actually grew up around basketball. My dad was a professional basketball player. My mom was a professional basketball player who was then a professional basketball coach. My uncle was a coach. My older brother was playing. So I was just always around basketball and going to games all the time. So I was just naturally drawn to basketball. It was never really pushed on me, but it was just always around. So I started playing when I was really young. I was 6. By the age of 7, I was playing on an organized team and games, playing with girls who were a little bit older than me. And I did try a few other sports. Playing overseas was a little bit different. The season was a little bit longer, so there wasn't quite as much opportunity for multi-sport seasons, but I did try a few other sports through sports camps and things like that, which I enjoyed, but I just had this passion and yearning for basketball. So I was always just outside playing, and that was kind of the only thing I wanted to do, and it just kind of stuck with me. So.
Nice. Next, we're going to move on to Anne. I know Anne has some experience with CYO. Anne, did you want to talk about that?
Sure. I grew up around basketball, very similar to Tia. I was one of 7 children, 4 older brothers. Grew up in the Bronx. We played outdoors in the playground all the time. And then it was CYO basketball. There really wasn't too many other teams for us to play on except the basketball. But it was kind of a family affair. It was always something we did together, we enjoyed, and it's just in our blood.
Very nice. And Coach Carla.
I grew up playing basketball and soccer first, actually, before softball was introduced to me. I mean, I always watched the New York Yankees with my dad, so that was always on TV, and I always had 2 favorite baseball players, Tino Martinez and obviously Derek Jeter, one of the all-time greats. But growing up, I tried basketball, soccer. Softball came later on around middle school when I didn't make my travel soccer team for 3 years in a row. And I was like, maybe I'm going to try something else. So then I tried out for a softball travel team that was, local. I'm originally from Queens as well. So it worked out and I stuck with it and I'm really happy I did. So where I am today.
And Coach Susan.
Yeah, I grew up playing several sports, mostly with the boys on the block. We played anything from baseball, hockey, football, wiffle ball, stickball, basketball. There wasn't, like Ann, as much organized sports. We did participate in CYO swimming and CYO basketball, but I was fortunate to play basketball and softball from elementary school through high school. And then as I graduated from college playing both of those sports, I then played in adult leagues and added on volleyball. So I played softball, basketball, and volleyball probably into my late 30s.
Great. All right, so jumping ahead a little bit in all of our history here. So we were all fortunate to play as kids. We were all fortunate to play in high school, and then all fortunate enough to continue on and play at the college level. So we're gonna just discuss college sports a little bit. This was actually the area that most of our students submitted questions about, I guess unsurprisingly so. So we're gonna start with just the importance of choosing a college. A lot of our viewers are currently in the process of trying to select their university and college over the next couple of years. So just this idea of, and a student actually used this term, this D1 or bust mentality, especially when it comes to trying to play a sport at the collegiate level. So I know all of us sort of have our thoughts on what makes a good fit for any particular female student athlete when they're looking for a college. Coach Sue, I know you were mentioning about the importance of trying to find a school that offers your degree program that you're looking for.
Yes, of course. I think everybody wants to participate in athletics in college, and that's a great opportunity, but you need to make sure that the institution or college that you select is one that has your major. And I say that for the fact that things can change over your 4 years in college. Maybe you'll get injured. Maybe the coach will change. Maybe sports you will not be as passionate about in your second or third year. So you need to make sure that you need to be comfortable with that school if basketball or whatever sport it is for you is not there. And that's what you need to make sure that's important, because after those 4 years, while we still want to continue to be healthy and participate in sports, we need to make sure that we graduate in those 4 years in a major that's going to provide an opportunity for us to have a career.
Right. Tia, I know that you were talking about the importance of finding a school culture that fits your needs. Did you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, finding a best fit school for you is really just that. And the way to do that is really just to go and visit the schools, reaching out to the coach, asking if you can go to a practice. And I know Carla can touch a little bit more about that, but just reaching out and seeing, can I come watch a practice, and kind of showing up to the school and the campus and the practice and feeling what the culture of the program is. Kind of getting a feel for what our practice is like. What is the coach like? What is the team like? Is this a team that I see myself being a part of? And then taking that again a step further, like Susan said, you want to make sure that the school is also the right fit for you, and to make sure that you are walking around campus and taking those visits, and really feeling like, is this a place that I can see myself fitting in and being here? Because at the end of the day, you're the one at the end of the 4 years who have to show up every day to practice and show up to class, and you're the one who's going to have this college experience, and you want to make sure that it's the fit for you, and the right place for you. And just to kind of touch a little bit about this D1 or bust mentality, I think it's always okay to have goals, and it's good to strive for things. But at the end of the day, having that mentality, I feel, is really just limiting yourself. And what you're doing with that is you're kind of just shutting off opportunities for yourself, an opportunity to be part of a team, an opportunity to, make friendships and relationships with people on a team who maybe a D1 school is not the best fit for you. Maybe it's not the right team atmosphere. Maybe it's not the right culture in the program that you want. Maybe the school isn't the right fit. Like Susan said, maybe it doesn't have your major. Maybe there is, say, a D2 or a D3 school that fits you best. And I think by not keeping those opportunities open, you're just shutting yourself off to those opportunities to do what you love, but also make yourself better through sports, not just as an athlete, but as a person.
Awesome. Yeah, and I know you and I had talked a little bit about the importance of, like Tia said, actually visiting campus and making sure that it's a good fit, but also the idea of showing demonstrated interest. Did you want to talk a little about that?
Sure. Whether it's just talking about college admissions in general or combining that with talk about athletics as well. You need to,
yeah, a little bit of both, sure.
Right. You need to let the school know. You have to show what's called demonstrated interest. You have to go to open houses. You need to make visits, send emails, reach out to admissions officers. Whether it's virtual, if that's what you have to use, that's fine. But virtual visits, every time that you participate in something at a college, even if you open an email and read it as opposed to just ignoring it, all of those things, the colleges keep records, and they're not going to say really too much about demonstrated interest in anything that you read. But if there are two students or student athletes who are on the same level, grade point average wise, resume wise, but student A has only visited the school once and student B has visited 3 times, sent emails saying thank you for the opportunity, obviously they're going to go with the one who shows more demonstrated interest. So whether it's just in terms of academics or both academics and athletics, it's a very, very important thing that you should be concentrating on as you go through high school and think about college.
Yep, absolutely.
And can I share a mom story?
Of course, go for it.
About fit. My son James played in a Division III level lacrosse program, and it was an excellent fit for him and became such an important part of his life that he ended up being the assistant coach for 6 years after he graduated, because it was such an important and such an awesome fit for him. Yes, it was Division III, but he was extremely dedicated, and it was just a good example of what a tremendous impact his academic life and his coaching experience had on his life.
Yeah, definitely. Coach Carla, I know that you've done a lot of work both in your athletic and professional career in terms of helping student athletes understand the importance of a timeline when you're reaching out to colleges. Did you want to share a little bit of that work that you've done?
Sure, absolutely. So with the timeline of what you're thinking about, whether you're a freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, I want your mindset to think more of, instead of D1 or bust, just college athletics, right? Let's think about that as the umbrella, and then what falls underneath that. Because when you get to go home and after those 4 years are over, you get to say that you were a college athlete. It does not matter what division you go to, because there are plenty of Division III teams that can beat Division I teams and vice versa in all sports. So, I strongly believe there's a fit for everybody. That's what we say when we're recruiting athletes, right? We might not be the best school for you, but there is a school out there. It's about how much work you're going to put in to potentially get to that point that you want to be at. So here is a brief guideline of definitely different things you could be doing each year. And a lot of questions that come up are, what should I be doing? Should I be doing more? How many times should I email? And we would tell you to always constantly do what's listed here. So freshman year, I don't need to read all of them. You can read them on your own. That's what it's going to take, some time on your own to evaluate what you're looking for. So like, for example, number 4 under freshman, know yourself and what you're looking for, which goes back to attending practices, seeing that intensity, or seeing maybe you want more, maybe you want less, but what is more? So everyone says, I want more, but define what that more is for yourself. And I think you'll be able to evaluate where you're going to fit. And that's going to take a lot of communicating, a lot of conversations within each of these years. So yes, sophomore, junior year are tough because Division I's and Division II's can speak to you during these years. So Division III's have a different timeline. So those are some things that you can be researching and asking questions to your coaches, to your guidance counselors, anybody in your high school, to review these timelines, which would, better assist you in choosing what's best for you. So if we go to the next slide about how to best communicate via email. So I had to do a quick Zoom call with the travel team with about 60 young ladies that were looking to potentially play softball. And I always start with a quote, and the quote was, "Communication works for those who work at it." So that is definitely what we talk about with recruiting. So I say it's like an interview, speed dating, it's your resume. If you're on a speed dating website, you're asking 3 questions and you're getting direct answers. Or if you're on an interview and they ask you to talk about yourself, you have to be ready to answer those questions, and you have to be ready to communicate, whether it's email, text, because you're also talking about where you want to go and what you want to do when you get there. So these are just easy ways to think about communicating. And if we go to the next slide these are just some points, what coaches want to know versus what student athletes want to know. Coaches are always looking for different, depending on the program, character, communication, coachability. We say a lot of say-do gap. So what you say and what you do can be 2 very different things. And I learned that in my college career, because Coach Cassidy was my coach, for those who don't know that. So that was something that she held us accountable for all the time. So I don't know if anybody else wants to add to what I'm saying, but this is something that was huge for me as a college athlete. And then student athletes, what do you want to know? So we want you to communicate. We want to hear from you. What are your questions? Take me through a practice. Sure, I could take you through a practice, or I can have one of my student athletes take you through a practice. You might want to hear from them, maybe rather than me, who will tell you more honest things maybe than I would. So these are, again, just guidelines, but I think you have to understand that there's a level for emails, call or text, and now we have the ability to Zoom. So taking advantage of those opportunities and really writing it down and evaluating what you want versus what maybe the next step wants.
Yeah, I think this topic of communicating both, with your current high school coach and guidance counselors, but also with your college coach, when you do get to that point, is such a major theme. I know a lot of our students were asking about how to best balance their academics with athletics when they finally do get to that point in their lives. Coach Sue, I know you were talking a little bit about the differences between Division 1, 2, and 3, just in terms of the commitment levels, and how important it is to, I think, figure out ahead of time, from an academic standpoint, what might be the best division for any particular student athlete.
Right. Like the other panelists had discussed, obviously playing Division 1, Division 2, or Division 3 does not mean that the athlete is less committed. Those athletes are all the same passion and they're all committed to their sport. But just by legislation, there are different levels with Division 1, Division 2, and Division 3. So it's important to educate yourself on those differences. In each level, coaches have more flexibility in how much time they can actually spend with their athletes. A lot of it on Division 3 is not so much, you have to do a little bit more on your own because of the legislation, where they may not be able to see you until later on into the fall or later on into the spring. So those are a lot of things you need to check. Sometimes there's a lot more travel in Division 1. So there's a lot more travel and longer trips. That may mean more difficulty with balancing your studies and your athletic pursuits. So those are all things we should evaluate. And I'm just thinking about something that Carla mentioned about communication that is so important. And to remember that as coaches, we're recruiting you. And we also do recruit your parents, obviously, because they're a big part of you going to school. But we want to communicate with you because for 4 years, you're going to have to communicate with the coaches. So this is the time to get out there and present yourself in front of the coaches. Test it out, figure out how it is to speak to a coach. It's not always going to be easy, but it's really important because we don't want to talk to your parents because when you're there, your parents are gone. And we need to be able to coach and talk with you when you have issues. So that has to be a comfortable aspect.
Yeah, of course. Tia, I know you were talking about the importance of communicating with your college coaches, especially when it comes to potential majors and what academic supports might be in place for you at your intended university. Did you want to talk about that?
Yeah, sure. I think it's important to remember that when you are going to play a sport in college, you're making two commitments. You're making a commitment to play, but you're first and foremost making a commitment to be a student. And to without the academics, you can't play in college. And so I think it's really important to, as you're going through the recruiting process, that you talk to not only the coach, but you also seek out people in the athletic department who are involved in the academic piece of it. So they can kind of talk to you a little bit more about maybe what your major and what your interest is and what that looks like within the program, how you can balance that. For example, if you're looking to be a nurse, how can you balance going to practice and doing clinicals? And that's something that even reaching out to the girls on the team, maybe talking to them, seeing what kind of majors they're into, how they're able to balance their academics with the sport, and even just talking to the coach. What does a day look like? You know, I know for myself in college, it was kind of the same thing every day, where we had to schedule all our classes in the morning, we had practice in the afternoon, and then we had a set time for study hall and for getting our work done to make sure that we were staying on track. But we also had to seek out those people in the athletic department to help us, academic advisors and so on, to help keep us on track and to make sure that we were doing what we needed to do. So I think it's just really important to be proactive. Even if you don't really know exactly what your major is going to be just yet, that's okay. But just reach out to the academic people within the athletic department, talk to the coaches, just kind of also let them know that you know that the academics are an important piece of it, because they really are.
And can I just piggyback on that a little bit?
Sure.
When you were all trying to figure out where to go to high school, if you think back on what you did, you probably came to open house, you probably shadowed with us or wherever you do go to school. So colleges don't have shadowing programs, but what Tia is saying is so important. You know, see if you could speak to some of the team members to find out a little bit more about what it's really like. That's not inappropriate. You know, you go through the coach and find out if you could just, you know, as Tia said, go through a typical day with them. So what you learned looking for a high school, it's just on a more mature, intense level maybe, but it's a lot of the same type of skills. And if you don't know what you want to major in, as Tia said, that's fine. You can enter undeclared, but you want to find out as much information as you possibly can. So I just wanted to agree with Tia.
Okay, so even with all of those benefits and those of us fortunate who were fortunate enough rather to play sports in college, on the other side of that, there is a significant percentage of girls who either don't participate or choose not to participate beyond a certain age. So the Women's Sports Foundation recently found that 40% of teen girls do not participate in sports as compared to about 25% of teen boys. And then by age 17, after most girls have gone through puberty, more than half of girls will have quit sports altogether, which I actually found pretty fascinating. And a lot of this presentation is going to focus on why we feel that is, and certain areas of growth that maybe we can all sort of focus on and contribute to as we all move forward. I know, Tia, you had some initial thoughts on why that might be the case.
Yeah, you know, I think as a middle school coach myself, and just going through middle school and high school as an athlete myself, I know that a lot of times I've overheard, you know, girls who won't go try out for a team, or they just decide not to try out the following year after playing. A lot of that seems to have to do with not feeling like they belong. Like maybe girls don't belong in sports, or maybe you don't belong on the team. And we're going to talk about all the benefits of being an athlete. And this statistics is a little bit disheartening to see, because once you've been in sports and you realize what it does for you, not just through high school, but throughout your life, and the benefits and the assets that it has to your life, you know, sometimes when you're in that and you're deciding whether to not go out for a team or try out or play, you might not feel like the sacrifices that you're going to make are worth it. Or you might feel like, well, you know, I don't necessarily belong. I might not be a starter. I'm not the best person on the team, but it's really important to remember that every single athlete who is part of a team belongs on the team, and every single athlete who is on that team has a role. And without any athlete on the team, there really isn't that, you know, they always say a team is the sum of all its parts, right? And so it's always important to remember that no matter where you fall within that sport, whether it's your best sport or not your best sport, the things that you're getting out of in terms of being part of a team and the lessons that you're learning that you'll take with you throughout your life are worth the sacrifices that are made to be part of sports. You know, and people always ask me what the thing is that I miss the most about being an athlete and a college athlete. And my number one answer is always being part of a team. And I don't know if it feels like it to you now, but I'm sure many of the panelists here can agree. There's nothing quite in life that compares to being on a team. There's something just really special about it. The relationships that you build, the connections that you make, and just all the things that you learn from being part of sports, which we'll touch on here as we move forward.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you know, there's such a wealth of knowledge and data, you know, documenting really the benefits for girls and women specifically, having been athletes. So obviously there's the physical component to it, staying fit. You know, chances are if you're an athlete when you were young, you're going to at least try to be an athlete for the rest of your life. I know I was a softball player in college, and I can't play competitively anymore, but I've taken up running, and I ran my first half marathon actually back in November. So I think we always kind of seek out different ways to stay athletic throughout our lives. The social component obviously is a big part of that. Like you said, Tia, being a member of a team, having that strong sense of belonging, that's obviously going to contribute to your self-confidence, you know, lessening anxiety, depression, and especially for young girls, you know, I don't think that can be stressed enough as a positive for the benefits of playing sports. And then on the academic side, you know, these things are pretty well documented as well, having a higher high school graduation rate for female athletes, higher college attendance. And the NCAA actually put out a study a couple of years ago where they found that female student athletes had a reported graduation rate of 75%, which was 14 percentage points greater than the male student athletes in that same study. And the graduation rate for the entire student body for that study was 68. So female athletes had a higher college graduation rate than male athletes and female non-athletes, which I think really says a lot about the benefits that you get from actually being an athlete in college in particular. And I know you had a lot of different anecdotes, and they're all pretty cool when it comes to how you benefited from playing sports. Did you want to go through a little bit of that?
Sure. I mean, you covered the physical part of it, so I don't have to talk about that because I obviously can't play basketball anymore, but there are other things that you can do. And the social part was probably I got the most benefit from, I think, more than anything else. And you always hear people say, well, I've remained friends with them forever. And it's very true. I've been out of college 40 years and I still am very, very friendly with many of my teammates. You know, that sense of belonging that Tia was talking about, and that team mindset, it has really been a tremendous blessing for me in my life. You know, you learn so much. You become a stronger person because it's fun to win, but when you lose, you know, you learn just as much how to deal with some adversity. You're not always going to be great at everything that you do. You know, you're going to be wonderful. I know that, but you're not going to be great at everything. And learning how to deal with things that are difficult or disappointment or losses, I can't stress how important that is. And you learn more and more and more as you mature. So there's just so much to learn, and the social part of it and that sense of belonging, it's just amazing. And when you have supportive teammates, to help you through a difficult time. There's nothing better than that. When you have a teammate who can pick you up when you're really having a hard time, or a coach who can pick you up, it makes it's a very, very positive influence in your life. It's just that belonging is wonderful. Do I get to tell my Tennessee story? I have to tell one basketball story.
I was going to say, I hope you do tell the Tennessee story.
Yeah. Tennessee was an awesome team when I was in college. It's kind of like UConn now, but it was even cooler because I played in an era where, like when things were just beginning, really, when Title IX was just getting going. I feel like a trailblazer or a pioneer, maybe. Things were just very different. But we got to play Tennessee, which was the coolest thing ever because they were a great team. And I hope you've heard of Coach Pat Summitt. She was an amazing individual for so many different reasons. But we got to play against her team. And if we beat Tennessee in this game, we made it to the Elite Eight. It wasn't even called that back then. But anyway, if we beat Tennessee, we would have been going to the Final Four, which would have been crazy because Fordham was like a not popular team at all. And anyway, we didn't beat them, but that's beside the point. We had a great game. They were all 6'4", 6'6". It was just amazing. But anyway, we're playing. And at one point, their point guard, without even looking, just passed it behind her head into the 6'6" center on Tennessee, who just laid it up for a layup. And me and my teammates kind of looked at each other like in awe, like, should we applaud? Should we just get back on D and hustle? Like, what should we do here? So it ended up to be an amazing experience for us. And I wouldn't trade that for anything. So we lost, but it was an amazing experience and we gave them a good go. And it was just a great, wonderful experience for me.
Oh, that's awesome. Coach Sue, I know you had a lot of thoughts on the academic benefits of being a student athlete.
Yes, sure. There's a lot of benefits, I guess. But for me, being a coach and also being the athletic director, a big focus for me is how people perform academically, because that's going to really determine whether they're even going to be playing athletically. So for me, through elementary school, as well as through college and high school, athletics and academics were on the same level. They were both important to me. I felt like the obligation and desire to be successful at both, and I worked to achieve that. I think that athletics will provide you the confidence, the perseverance to be successful. It allows you to rise above difficulties, and then in yourself, you expect greatness. And I think that's what's important. Seeing yourself succeed, that makes you expect greatness from yourself. You learn time management skills because you got to balance academics and athletics. And then that will allow you to be successful outside of the athletic arena. When I was in school, I was always the captain of my team, but I was also on the honor society. So I wanted to make sure I did both. I managed to graduate college in 3 years. I was an academic All-American. I got inducted to an academic All-American Hall of Fame, which recognizes, from the NCAA, which recognizes what you did in college as well as what you did in your career afterwards. So going to show you that what you did in college is to prepare you for what's later in life, which will be your ultimate career. So I feel like I was able to do all those things because of athletics, because that instilled in me the belief that I could succeed at anything I chose. So I do really think it's important.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think another big part of sort of instilling those values in us as student athletes tends to come from important figures in our life. So whether it's a role model, or I know when I originally posed this question to everyone, we all said that our parents were very important figures as developing athletes, which I thought was pretty cool. I know my dad reminds me all the time that he was my first and best softball coach, and he's not wrong either. So we're just going to go down the line. Anne, if you'd like to start just talking a little bit about important figures in your athletic career and why they were so important.
Well, in addition to parents, as you said, I had an English teacher in high school who was also the moderator of a basketball team. And I think that was special because she was our teacher and she also was really into sports and she had a tremendous influence on us. She believed in us very, very much, and it was helpful. And my college coach had a tremendous influence on me as well. Like, back then she had to work really hard. She had no assistants. She had an assistant coaches. She had another full-time job. So we saw how hard she had to work, and she believed in us. So therefore, we believed in ourselves, as Susan just said a few minutes ago. But I think that my high school English teacher and moderator and my college coach were probably in addition to my family, obviously, who influenced me the most.
Carla, one of your role models is actually on the panel tonight.
Yeah, lucky me. So obviously, yes, my parents, like you mentioned, they were a huge part of my development, especially my dad. He always said the same thing to me. He was always saying, Carla, there will always be someone better than you, but will there be someone that works harder than you? And when he kept saying that to me, even in middle school, whether it was soccer or basketball at the time, I was like, no, like that's going to be my choice. And I have the choice to change that. So, which leads me, I think, into meeting Coach Cassidy, which is a huge reason why I picked Holy Trinity. When I first went to an open house and I put myself out there and I'm like, I'm going to talk to all these different schools, and she was there, and it was like, oh, you play softball. Okay, here's the tryouts. See you then. And I was like, okay, I'm not really sure what to expect, but I went in and I did the best I could. She offered me a spot. I'll never forget the day. She said, you have two choices. You could be on varsity and not play much, or you could be on JV and start every single game. And I said, no, I'll be on varsity. Like, I want to be on varsity. And she said, okay, see you tomorrow. Very short, sweet, and quick. And from that day, I wasn't a starter my freshman year. I had to work extremely hard to try to make my impact. And whenever she called on me for a pinch hit role or anything that she needed, I tried to do the best I could. And I think every time she put me in, I had a successful at bat. I really don't remember specifics, but that was like the most honorable thing for me at Trinity, was to make the varsity team and be able to have some sort of impact, even if it was so small. So from there, she left and she announced that she was going to Molloy. And that at the first I was like, what? She can't leave. Like, what is she talking about? And then I later on played for Molloy, which all of you know already. And high school to college was a little different. But the reason why I went to Molloy was, yes, softball was part of it. Academics, I wanted to teach and be an educator. And it wasn't easy, but I knew what I was in for. And I was very lucky that she believed in me as a freshman, 14-year-old going to Holy Trinity. And then she believed in me again and she recruited me to Molloy. So she was a huge part of why I even want to coach. And I want to continue teaching the game of softball. In addition to someone I met at Trinity, a gentleman that now is also on my staff, and his two daughters went to Holy Trinity. So it's a huge reason. Trinity has a huge, impact on my life athletically. And these figures have taught me so much, but he taught me more skill and how to improve my skill when I got to Molloy. He completely changed how I hit and took me to another level from the college standpoint. So I'm very lucky, and I'm even lucky to be here. So it was a good time. It was tough though. I mean, I'm just putting that out there, Coach. It was tough, but all worth it.
Coach Sue, you have a response to that?
Yes, Carla's being very modest. Carla was easy to coach because Carla was very passionate and knew what she wanted and was able to be resilient if things didn't work out well, so that I always knew that I could use her. And I think that's what served her well here. And I think that's what she got from athletics, obviously. So that's why she's been successful now. I think when I grew up, maybe like Anne, there wasn't as many women role models for us in sports, because there really was not many true professional sports. So a lot of my sport role models were in baseball or basketball. I love Pete Rose, which none of you guys will remember, but you can ask your dads. I'm sure they would remember Pete Rose, and he was on the Cincinnati Reds. And I loved his style of play, and they called him Charlie Hustle. So I was like crazy about him. So that was who we looked at. Obviously, my father was a big role model for him, and I was fortunate to even be able to coach with him at Trinity, which was awesome, and then coach with him here at Molloy. But I can remember from when I was little, there was never a time that my father did not support me with whatever I discussed, whether it was an athletic pursuit or an academic pursuit. and what I wanted for my career ambitions. He never really sat down and said, oh, you can't do that. So that belief continued with me when I chose to go into the police department, which was an odd career for someone to choose, I guess being a female at that time. But he never said to me, oh, that's not anything you can do. So I went into that. And so I feel like that's what helped me. And then when I got actually to Molloy, there was another gentleman here that actually recruited me that ended up coaching me and then became the athletic director and then the vice president of the school. And he was just like my dad in terms of always guiding me. Anything that, again, that I chose, he felt that I could do. He was always encouraging. And I think that people got to realize that mentors are important because they can steer you and guide you on the right path. Okay, they know what you're capable of, and it's their job as mentors to try to get you to see that as well. So I think it's really important for each one of us to find a mentor along the way, so they can set you on the correct path and guide you.
Tia, who were some of your role models and mentors growing up?
Yeah, kind of like everyone else has said, my parents, first and foremost, from the beginning have, like I said, I was always around basketball. It was in my blood, in my family. And my parents were really just supportive of me, and they were always teaching me, but they were never pushing me. I never felt pressure from my parents. I always felt support. After every game, win or lose, there was always something new to learn and something new to work on. But it was never done in a way where they were putting pressure on me. And it was just always, win or lose, chin up, and we'll move on tomorrow. And that was really just so helpful to me. Another role model was actually my older brother. He's 5 years older than me, and growing up, I was always just outside playing with him and his friends. And what I really appreciated about my brother, which I think I realize more now in hindsight than I did at the time, was that he would just look at me as an athlete and not just a girl or his little sister. He'd take me along to the playground, and whoever he was playing against, I'd hop on a team and I'd play. And it was like he looked at me like he looked at any other player out there, which, made me really respect my brother a lot. There were times where I felt like, man, I'm in 6th, 7th grade and I'm playing against these high school guys. Like, what's going on? What are you doing to me? But at the end of the day, he just saw me as an athlete and just wanted me to just get better. It wasn't, oh, you're a girl or you're a female athlete. It was like, are you a basketball player or not? If you are, come on, let's go to the playground and we're going to get better. So he was someone who I always really looked up to. I always loved watching him play and was always trying to learn from him. And then finally, my college coach as well. He going through the recruiting process was a fun time, but it was also can be overwhelming. And I felt like, a lot of times you sometimes hear what you want to hear. And I think my college coach was someone that I just really respected because he felt very honest from the beginning, and kind of similar to Carla's story in a way. You're going through the recruiting process and they're telling you, yeah, you're going to start and you're going to be a star player and this and that. And it all feels really good to hear. And then from him, he just kind of said, you have an opportunity if you'd like to redshirt your freshman year, and you'll give up maybe 20 minutes per game and you'll get an extra year of college and you'll probably play 40 minutes your senior year. And for me, going through that process, it kind of hit me pretty hard because I'm thinking like, wait, I love Villanova. I love this school. I love everything about it. And he's telling me I'm going to have to sit my freshman year. And at the end of the day, what I realized is that he was just looking out for my best interests, not just while I would be playing for him, but for the future. And because of that, I was able to switch my major along the way and triple major and do all those things that you saw in the beginning. And what I really respected and appreciated about my college coach is that he saw us as people first before athletes. And he was always, and he stressed from the beginning that he was going to make academics a priority. And if you were getting a C in something, when he knew you could be doing better, he'd be on you just as hard as he would about a turnover in a game. And it wasn't easy. It wasn't always easy. It is hard, like Carla said. It's not, it's not always rainbows and butterflies when you're going through it. But I think it's really important to have those, like Susan said, have mentors and role models and people you can trust in your life that are going to help you through the process.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so definitely it's really amazing to hear the strength of the mentors that you all had, growing up as female athletes. Just as a little bit of a addendum to that, we also talk a lot about the importance of having female leaders, especially within athletics. And I just want to read a quote. It's a little long, so bear with me, but I think it's important. It's from Jen Welter, who is credited actually as being the first female coach in the NFL. And that was only 6 years ago, so it was 2015. So she was asked about why she thought girls were not more prevalent within professional sports. And what she said was, I think girls drop out of sports a lot of the times because they don't see girls at the highest level to the extent that boys do. Why would you think that a girl would feel like she belongs in sports if she doesn't see girls in sports in the same amount and degree as the boys do? And when she was asked on becoming the first female coach in the NFL, she said, "This is a dream I was never planted to have because I couldn't look at the NFL sidelines and see a coach and say, I want to be her when I grow up. The beauty of any time that you have a first is that now everybody's permitted to have that dream. When you change the visibility, you change the possibility." And that last line really, really struck me. So I think, obviously all of us, I think, definitely had strong role models. And it sounds like a lot of us had strong coaches and strong male coaches. But definitely, I think the importance of having females that you can look up to as a developing student athlete is definitely important. And I know Coach Sue, you had some thoughts on that as well.
Yeah, obviously difficult to see yourself in a position of power or leadership when you don't readily see females in those positions. We all had a support system growing up, but everybody doesn't have a support system or does not have the family structure that enables them to pursue dreams outside of what their family normally experiences. So for the opportunity for young girls to see successful females in positions that may be traditionally dominated by males will provide them a reference point so they could, set their own path. I think if we increase positions for women in leadership, that'll reduce the stigma associated with having women, powerful women. Some people are intimidated by women they would perceive as powerful, but a man could do the same position and they don't see that intimidating. So I think if we see women as young girls, if we see women balancing what their career is as well as having a family life, that'll encourage us to feel like we could do the same. I think often people feel like I can do one or the other, but the more that they can see females being able to balance both those, then they can have those same aspirations and they can envision themselves doing the same thing. So I think it's really important.
Coach Carla, your thoughts on the need for female leadership?
Yeah, I agree with everything Susan just mentioned. And I feel that it's important that we highlight that girls and women belong in the sports world, belong in athletics. It seems that many, young female athletes quit playing or don't pursue sports because they don't really feel like they belong. And I think that's where it's our responsibility, in this role to let them know that they do. I think it's important to highlight the benefits of playing sports, which we just reviewed, right? And we're continuing to hit on different points here. And it's worth those sacrifices that it's going to take, to play a sport, whether it's just in high school or you're trying out for a travel team and going through that failure, which I was very lucky and blessed to have. Yes, Susan was one of them. Then I had the gentleman who Coach Lou is now coaching with me. He's one of my mentors, and I'm lucky enough to still have him and have this world of female leadership around me. And he works for me. That's the best part. We joke about it, but he's like, Carla, you were meant to do this. You know, he believed in it so much, and it's so nice to feel that support. And I would say, yeah, those sacrifices are tough, but you're going to learn the most. And I think, Anne, you might have said this, or Tia, from failing and continuing failing to learn what it means to sacrifice and take something from that. So I think the quote you read was outstanding.
Tia, did you have anything to add to the female leadership discussion?
I think when we're talking about, women in sports, obviously agreeing with everything Susan and Carla are saying, that women belong in sports. And I think it's also important to just keep in mind that if you are a female who loves sports and you want to be involved in sports, and it's something that you might think of as a career, that I think it's important to note that there are so many opportunities for women in the sports world that sometimes we don't always hear about. But for example, if you're someone who is passionate about math, analyzing statistics for teams, or if you're, into marketing, there are positions available for marketing and things like that. I know Anne had mentioned journalism too. If you're someone who loves to write, there are so many opportunities out there for women. I think it's great, and it's definitely absolutely important to see women in those positions, when we're watching sports and seeing them on the field and seeing them on the sidelines, on the court, and so on. But also it's important to keep in mind that there are a lot of other opportunities out there for women in the sports world.
I just wanted to say one thing more than to piggyback on what Tia said. We talked earlier about the culture of a school, the feeling that you get at a school. I think when you're looking for a college, whether you're an athlete or not, you want to find that fit, but you also, as being an athlete, I want to be in an atmosphere that, if I hope to play in college, that celebrates women in sports. I think on the high school level, I think Holy Trinity is really very good at that. We celebrate all the different victories, male or female, and that's part of the culture moving from high school to college too. Do you get that feeling that this is somewhere I really want to be, whether it's academically or athletically?
So continuing on about our discussion of female leadership, especially in sports, another somewhat shocking statistic, I think. So the NCAA put out that only 24% of all head coaches at the college level are women. So since we are lucky enough to have two members of that 24% on our panel this evening, Coach Carla, would you like to talk a little bit about how you got to the point that you're at in your career, sort of your development and journey towards becoming a college coach?
Sure. I will tell everybody that it wasn't easy. I always knew I wanted to teach, and that led to teaching the game of softball. I've developed many skills and traits due to this team sport, which is something that I miss. I miss being with my team, which I know Anne mentioned before that she still talks to her teammates, which I think is something that I hope I can still do. It has taught me how to lead, how to have tough conversations, like I was saying before, how to communicate. We're still doing that as college coaches, communicating, having those conversations, how to constantly compete, and most importantly, how to work with so many different personalities for a common goal. Athletics has given me a family that I can never forget. I know every time I go back to Molloy or Holy Trinity and I see those teammates, or I see the professors or teachers, I'm so excited to see them and catch up and ask how they are. It's taught me so many little things that I take now on as a head coach, things that I take to Adelphi, eye contact, posture, listening twice as much as you speak. These are some things we constantly talk about that Susan also said to me a few times, as a student athlete, trying to arrive 15 minutes early. I have a rule at Adelphi where we say, no yawning. And they always look at me like, why is she saying this to me? I don't understand. Why can't I yawn? I said, well, first you use your glove if you need to yawn. Second of all, when I had a recruit or I had someone coming to ask me questions, she yawned right in my face. And I said to her, is this you know, you don't have to be here. Like, if you're tired, you can go. And I want them to realize that one day they're going to be in front of their boss. They're going to be interviewing for a job. And I want them to be aware of their surroundings. So I'm sure if I yawned in front of my college coach, you would probably be like, you know, maybe you should go back to sleep, like something along those lines of knowing what you're doing and when you're doing it. And all these little things brought me to where I am. And it's so rewarding as a college coach now, seeing my student athletes doing the same thing and taking on those traits. So we always work on holding them accountable, but I also tell them that they can hold me accountable if I make a mistake, or, you know, what we see fits the crime, if you want to put it like that. Before every fall season, I always remind them that this is a privilege, not a right, you know, and they have to work really, really hard to be where they are. And they're very lucky to have, you know, teammates and a family and somewhere to go. And I think that's what high school athletes need to know, that there's a sense of community, and it's a great feeling. So, you know, I want to hold myself to a high standard. I hold my athletes to a high standard, and it's got me where now I'm a head coach of a great program, great university, and I hope I can continue that there. So as female coaches, we must remind them to work for everything, and nothing is handed to them. So I'm very lucky, and I'm very grateful.
Coach Sue, I know you wanted to talk a little bit about your career and your journey towards becoming a college coach. But just as a side note, it must be sort of a special point of pride for you to have Carla, who was such an exceptional player, both at the high school and college level, under your leadership, now being a colleague of yours. What's that like?
Yeah, you know, we always say that because now is a lot of the, it must mean I'm getting older because they're getting ready to coach in college. So I can accept that, but it's actually very rewarding to see them on the opposite side. It's actually weird in the beginning, but there are a couple of the players that have played for me that are actually coaching. So I feel like in some way, maybe that was because they realized how passionate I was about it, and the experience with me as the coach was a good experience, hopefully, at least 90% of the time. We're not sure about that. But I think it's important, like, because even my desire to become a coach, obviously, at some point we realized that we can no longer probably pursue our athletic ability, you know, on the court or the field. So that's when we decide that we should become a coach. I think I had probably a non-traditional trip to being a coach. I spent 20 years in the New York City Police Department prior to actually being in my current position as the head softball coach here at Molloy and the AD. But during that time when I was in the police department, I coached happily 15 years at Holy Trinity. I coached 3 sports. I coached basketball for 8 years, volleyball for 7 years, and softball for 15. I also had the opportunity to coach for 9 years at LIU Post, CW Post, when it was CW Post Division II. I coached volleyball there. So I had all those opportunities. But when I look back at it and I think about all the teamwork that we've talked about that is involved, like teamwork was important in both those jobs that I had. So obviously teamwork in law enforcement, if you don't have teamwork, you need people to be backing you up at all times because your life could be on the line. So obviously teamwork is really important there. And now as a coach, we really have to instill teamwork. And even in my role as an athletic director, I feel like the coaches are part of my team. So we all need to work together. And when you really go back and focus, I think that the failures that you experienced as an athlete that's your first introduction sometimes to failure. And I think how we respond to that failure through athletics is what's going to provide us with the coping mechanisms to be more successful as we move on in life. So I think sometimes that's the first time people fail is when they're in athletics. Because I always kid around, and Carla will remember this. I always tell the kids, I am your reality check, because I am not your mother and you're not your father. So you're not great to me. So if I critique you, I'm doing it to benefit you. Sometimes that's the first time kids have heard that. So Carla's laughing, but I always say I am your reality check. So I do think that's important. And I think that's what the great thing about athletics is, the ability to overcome difficulties and then to make that propel you to succeed later on.
Sure. Yeah, I think a lot of the skills that we've all learned as athletes, you know, obviously they benefit you on the field, but they're so applicable to really any fields that you're looking to go into. some pretty interesting stats from a study that was done fairly recently about the benefits of playing sports to women's careers. So 61% of female executives responded saying that sports contributed to their overall career success. And 94% of women in the C-suite, so meaning a CEO, CFO of those categories, played sports, and 52% of them played at the college level. So just as a little snapshot, I think that's very telling of the types of skills that you acquire as a student athlete and how they do tend to follow you after athletics into your chosen career. And I know probably as a school counselor, you're always working with students who are trying to figure out what they want to be when they grow up. And I know that you have a wealth of knowledge to share with them. Did you want to talk a little bit about how being a female athlete contributed to your career and any skills that you developed along the way?
Sure. I'm probably going to end up repeating some of what Susan said, but being an athlete, you really learn about perseverance. You learn about not giving up on your team or yourself. And that's applicable to any career that you go into. It helps to teach you patience, good rapport, getting along with others. I think that's one of the ones that I can apply to my career. I have to have a good rapport with my students and with my parents. And I think athletics helped me a lot with that. It's important to be loyal, whether you're a loyal team member on a softball team or a basketball team, or whether you're a loyal team member at whatever you do, as an executive or whatever your job, whatever your career is. It's important to be loyal. And just, to deal with adversity and be resilient. It's just, there's so many things. I mean, the list can go on and on and on. And not everybody's going to be a college athlete, but there are other ways to stay in college athletics. If you're not going to be a college athlete, maybe you can get an internship in the athletic communications office, or you can be a statistician or manager. There's so many different ways to volunteer coaches. There are so many different ways to stay involved, and so many different qualities that you will carry on. I think Susan said a lot about that. It really prepares you for any career. And we've talked about that team mindset and that family mindset. I mean, that is so true. And that starts in your home. But as someone who works at Holy Trinity, I feel like Holy Trinity is a family, and being on a team is a family. And I feel like it's really, really important to me to be part of a team, however that applies in my life. And I feel right now I am a part of a team. I'm part of Team Trinity, and we are a family. And I think that might sound corny, but I couldn't be more sincere. So I just think so many of the things that you learn through athletics will apply to anything that you decide to do.
Tia, I know you agree with a lot of those points. Did you have anything to add just in terms of your own personal and professional career development?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything Anne has said, and I agree with, being part of a team and being part of a family. There's really something special about that. Just to kind of add to that, for me, what I really learned as an athlete that I've carried with me through my professional career and just life in general is that, someone told me once, similar to Carla, what you said about effort, that there are two things that you can control, and that's your effort and your attitude. And any of you who's an athlete know that there are times where you have a bad game, or a shot's not falling, or whatever it might be. But those are two things that you can always control. And that's something I've taken with me in life in general, and especially in my career. My attitude in coming into work every day and working with others, but also the effort that I put into everything that I do, but especially my career. And like Anne said, I think just the importance of teamwork and working with others through sports. You're really you're working with people from all different walks of life, and you're all working towards a common goal. And I think that that's something that's really important to be able to take with you into your career. There's going to be many times where you're going to have to work with different kinds of people and different kinds of personalities, and you're going to have to work towards a common goal. And having that experience is really helpful for that. And like Susan said, this aspect of failure and learning from your mistakes, I think that's one of the greatest lessons, I think, in sports. There's always going to be failures, whether that's failure at the end of the season for not winning a championship, or whether that's failing by not winning a game, or whether that's failing by having a turnover. There's always failures and losses in sports. And the important thing about sports and the great thing about it is that you're able to just kind of take a step back and look at, okay, what went well and what went wrong? What do I need to change to better myself so that we can work better as a team and we can come back the next day and improve? And that's something that I take with me, again, in all aspects of life, but especially in my career, even as a teacher. If I'm teaching a lesson and the kids are, my students are sitting there and they're not really getting it, or they're not really into it, I have to just, on the spot, I got to take a step back and say, okay, what's not working? What can I change right now? I'm not just going to let the day just go and not learn from my mistakes and keep doing the same thing. It's like you're constantly in life going through different failures, different mistakes, and you have to be able to just kind of take a step back and think and have that mentality of, all right, what can I do to improve myself, or what can I do to change the situation for it to be better? So I think those two aspects are just really important. And then just the feeling of commitment and dedication that you have in sports, showing up to practice every single day for years, that's not easy. And especially after you've had a bad game, or you're coming back from a tough loss, the fact that you're coming up and you're showing up early, like Carla said, if you have to get there a little early to make sure that you're suited up on time, and all those little things that actually end up becoming habits that carry on through life. So I think having that aspect of commitment and dedication that you learn through sports is something that you take with you in your career. And I think that a lot of employers really seek out in athletes. And the last thing that I'll say is, Anne, I know you touched on, even if you're not going to be a college athlete, there are other ways to get involved. And I know just from my experience, a walk-on on our team who didn't get a scholarship, she wasn't recruited, came to practice, and she was the hardest worker on our team every single day. Never saw a minute on the court when it came down to the games, but she showed up every day and put in so much effort. And with that, she was rewarded with a scholarship for a year. And then, I know also managers who were on the team who showed up to practice and who would travel with us and who put in the same amount of time. I know that there are employers out there who are seeking those kinds of students, whether you're an athlete or you're just involved in sports, because they know that you're kind of learning these lessons that we're all talking about.
Yeah, I think undoubtedly there are so many traits and values that we carry into our careers, past the point of playing competitively. To shift gears just a little bit, and this is something that I thought was actually interesting that some of our students submitted questions about, this idea of athlete versus professional. So they were asking if there was ever a time in your professional career where maybe one of the skills that you picked up as a female athlete was perceived as a negative. And I know I shared a little anecdote with all of you when we were offline about my position before coming to Holy Trinity. I worked in a college admissions department, and I was having a performance review with my direct supervisor, and who I had a very good rapport with, had worked there for a couple of years. And we were just talking about day-to-day strengths and weaknesses. And then she told me that some of the people in the department found me to be a little too aggressive. And it was really one of the first times in my life where I was speechless, because I had never been categorized as aggressive before. If anything, my coaches and teammates had told me to be more aggressive. And, it's something that I tell my varsity athletes all the time. Be aggressive at the plate, be aggressive on defense. So to be called aggressive and then for it to be a negative trait, both of those things were new to me. Truly, I was about 25 years old when this happened. So it was something that I kind of had to adjust to, I think, and really look into why I was being perceived that way.
I would suggest, or as I've been saying, I guess the constant theme is to communicate and have the conversation. So this is where I would say to get some clarification on, you know, what maybe they saw was negative and where you were coming from, like you said, assertive more than aggressive. And I think when you have those open conversations and you feel like you're in a safe place and you can really express maybe what you're thinking and your values and what they're valuing, can really clear what path you're trying to go on and what you want, right? So for example, I was in a similar scenario where I had someone, a grandparent, a male grandparent, ask me, was I old enough to coach, you know, being in this role and being a younger coach, right? And what I mean by that is I just finished, you know, college not too long ago. I understand what he meant. And I had that open conversation with him, just saying, I know what I'm doing. I know I love it. I know I'm supposed to be here and I'm really happy to be here. And I think he like laughed it off and he said, listen, that's great. I'm really happy to hear it. I hope I didn't offend you. I'm like, no, you didn't offend me, but I want you to know how lucky I am to have this profession. So I had that conversation very briefly, but quickly. And I wanted him to know that I know this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And I was really happy that I had the opportunity to say it, you know, in the moment. So that's just some feedback that I would give, and an example that I went through.
I would say, thankfully, I really haven't had that experience. I would say it's been more the opposite, actually, just on interviews and that I've been on. Being an athlete has actually been more of a positive than it has been a negative. I think people that I've interviewed with or people that I've spoken to have seen that as a positive. But like Carla said, I would say if that's something that were to come up, having that open conversation and talking with them. And I think sometimes people can be intimidated by confidence, and that's not to say that it's a bad thing. You know, I think as long as you're having that open conversation and wanting to know where this is coming from, again, so that you can learn from it, whether that's the way it is or whether that's not, having that open conversation. If there is some miscommunication, you also on your end can learn how to adjust and what needs to be changed if kind of there is a negative to it. But I think in most cases, it seems that being a female athlete is perceived more positively, I would say, than negatively in my experience.
And what Carla's saying about having that conversation, that's important for everybody. As a high school student, you're having difficulty in a certain way with a particular teacher. I don't know, I can't count how many times I've said to my students, well, you need to have a conversation with them. You know, and that can be intimidating. They're an adult, you're not, and it can be intimidating, but if it also helps you to learn how to communicate better and to communicate not just with your peers, but with adults as well, and even adults in authority positions. So it's not only being an athlete, what we're talking about is being an athlete, but even if you're not an athlete, that is, you know, having that conversation is a skill that you'll have to develop over time.
And approaching those conversations with the right attitude, and kind of that difference between confidence and cockiness, and making sure that you are presenting as confident, but you know, not making sure that you have the right attitude also.
Yeah, that's a good point. I spend the bulk of my professional career here at Holy Trinity, you know, obviously meeting incoming freshmen and talking to their families about why they want to come to Trinity and what they're looking for in a high school experience. And I'll tell you, I've been here for about 5 years, and I am always impressed at the number of students who will call me and email me and ask me the things that usually you hear from the parents. I have students asking me about financial aid and how they can apply for scholarship. And so it goes back, to the earlier discussion too, of communicating well, and just sort of advocating for yourself, in order to have a more open dialogue with people who might be a little bit intimidating. I don't think that I would have called an admissions director or an administrator at a high school when I was 13 years old. So it's never too early to sort of fine tune those skills. All right, so as we're wrapping up here, if we want to just go around our virtual room here, and why don't we start with you? What's one thing that you want our viewers to remember from this discussion we had tonight?
Oh, gee. Well, we've talked a lot about what you can do to be a better student, a better person. We've talked about roles for different roles that you'll have. And I think it's really, really important that you also think about not only how can I better myself, but if you're part of a team, how can I better my team? What can I do to make my teammates better? And that's a really, really important aspect of being an athlete. It's not all about you, it's about your team and what can I do to help my team. I just think that's something you can think about. And one of the things, Jackie had given us questions to answer and things. One of the things I filled out, I said, I don't think that I don't want to imply that athletes are better than other people. I would never say that. But on the other hand, I think the experiences that we share with our teammates make us better people. So I just think maybe those two thoughts are something to think about.
Sure. Yeah. Coach Carla?
I would add to what Ann just said, how do you hold yourself accountable? I know it's so easy to say that, but we say hold yourself accountable, but then I would turn around and also say you need to reflect on and have a self-reflection of what you want, or maybe you didn't like how something went, or you didn't agree with how things or a conversation went, because we kept talking about conversations. Well, you should need to reflect on that so it can change the next time it happens. And that is something that I learned, and it took a little time, but, I keep a notebook. I write things down now to try to remember them because I can't remember everything. And I'm big into quotes. So I try to help myself by looking at quotes every day. So I'll leave you with one. There are talkers and there are doers. So you choose what you want to be, talkers or doers. And that's something that one of my coaches says all the time. And it's something that now I like to pass along. So accountability, reflection, and there are talkers and there are doers. And you have the choice to choose which one you want.
Tia, what about you? What's one thing that you want our viewers to remember from tonight?
Oh, it's hard to cut it down to just one, but I would just kind of come back to this idea of, as an athlete, that you can control two things, and that's your effort and your attitude, like I talked about earlier. And if you are someone who is interested in playing, after high school and in college, keep that in mind, because I think a lot of times athletes are so worried about their stats and, if they're being recruited, what kind of game they're having, or the points they're scoring, or the numbers they're putting up. But coaches are also looking for your attitude, what kind of teammate you are, and the effort that you're putting in. And that effort also goes along to seeking out opportunities. Reach out to coaches, reach out to schools, go there, be proactive in the process, so that you can find the place that really fits for you. And just the last thing I'll say, and that's just to all athletes, I think it's important I think when you're in it, it's hard to remember that feels like these days last forever and sports will be there forever, but there is a time when it ends, unfortunately. And like Carla said, it is a privilege, not a right, to play a sport, and it's a gift. And never take any of these moments for granted. Anytime you have an opportunity to be part of a team, anytime that you're out on the field, on the court, never take a second for granted, because it really is a gift.
And we'll give our last word to Coach Cassidy.
I was thinking the same thing. I guess I'm hoping that everyone that listened this evening realized just how passionate we were about our sport when we played, and just if you listen to our voices, how passionate we still are about it now. So take the time to reflect while you're playing, because I think when you're actually in the moment, people don't realize and they'll do a little bit of complaining. But when you step outside of that, you realize a couple of years down the road just how important those times were. So take that time to reflect. And then one thing that I always like to make sure that people realize, I always think there's a difference between motivation and discipline. Motivation is really awesome because that's what gets us going. But there's always those days that we wake up when we're really not motivated. And what gets us going is the discipline. So there's a big difference. And that discipline, I wholeheartedly believe you get from athletics.
I want to thank all of you so much for participating in our panel tonight. I learned a lot. I know that our viewers are going to learn a lot as well. And Coach Sue, you're right. We can at the very least tell that everybody is very passionate about their athletic career and what they do currently, and our ability to sort of affect, our students and our female athletes moving forward. So I do genuinely thank you all very much for participating.
And Jackie, I know I hope that people that are listening realize that we're the three of us are at least graduates of Holy Trinity, and Ann works at Holy Trinity. Yeah. So Holy Trinity had a big part of what we were able to do now and what we've been able to achieve. So kudos to Holy Trinity.